Ladies and gentlemen of the Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society and our guests from the larger amateur radio community, I would like to introduce you to Jim Fenstermaker, K9JF. Jim has been a ham for over 60 years and currently lives in Washington State in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. If you go to his write-up on his QRZ.com webpage, you will not only see a larger write-up of his history and interests, but you will see a nice view from his tower with the mountains in the background. He has held many key positions within the ARRL and is currently an ARRL honorary vice president. His new amateur radio passion is getting young people interested and active in amateur radio. We need to better create enthusiasm for radio among youth and the scouting community, for which he credits the Boy Scouts as his entry into amateur radio. He is interested in creating new educational and training programs for ARRL members and radio amateurs in general. I hereby turn over the meeting to Jim, K9JF.
Thank you. It's very good to be here and very good to be presenting this PowerPoint present to the club. Okay, this is the ARRL Foundation, kind of history and goals and grants and scholarships and how to qualify, and especially the how to qualify. I think is very important for people watching, because if you have kids that are looking for scholarships, if you have grandkids or maybe even great grandkids, you have to know how we operate. And I don't think we're that much different than any other foundation. So we'll start with this. Obviously, this is the ARRL Foundation, our logo. And this is about me, Jim K9JF, K9TZH back in Indiana in the late 50s and early 60s. I got my call when I was in Boy Scouts. A scoutmaster was a ham, and he got two of us, and we studied for the exam. And here we are, 60 plus years later, still doing this. It's a wonderful hobby, as we all know. As I said earlier, I was the Northwest Division Vice Director and Director, which includes the Northwest Division, Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Eastern Washington, and Western Washington. It's the largest division from the standpoint of square miles. Of course, we have Alaska in there, which adds a lot. That's even bigger than Texas. And also, from the standpoint of number of members, about 13,000 members, where I think we're number 3 or 4 in the US. After my service as division director, I was elected vice president. I did that for a few years, and I finally retired. My goal there was to come up with a strategic plan for the league, and then I got out of that. But I was also, when I retired, I was elected honorary vice president of the league. Right now, there's only about 6 of us that are honorary vice presidents, so I feel very humbled by being able to keep that title. I've been on the foundation board for about 10 years, and issuing scholarships and helping with the goals of the foundation. And I've been the scholarship committee chairperson for the last 3 years. Probably in all my radio career, and I've done a lot in amateur radio, as was said earlier, this is the most satisfying thing that I've done regarding amateur radio. It's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, as you'll see later on. But you know, one of my goals is to being able to affect people's lives, and especially younger people. And this is a very excellent way to work with people, to work with younger people, and to award scholarships. See, I really am an active ham. There on the right, you see me. That picture was taken about 100 years ago. I had hair then that's not gray, and I had a beard, and I'm watering my towers. And over on the left, you can see my tower, or at least you can see the antenna. This happens to be a 4-element 40-meter Yagi and a 3-element 30-meter Yagi sitting on top of a hill, what every ham dreams of. And that hill there over on the left-hand side of the picture, you see a little knoll there. That's about 4,500 feet tall, and over farther on to the left is the foothills of another hill that's almost 5,000 feet. And this is a view from our house. There under the antenna on the left-hand side underneath the balun is a house down there. For where I am on the tower right now, that's about 200 feet above the house down there. So I've got a very, very wonderful QTH for for working DX and for contests and the like. It's a lot of fun being there. Okay, here's what we're going to talk about. What is the ARRL Foundation? And I lost my screen. How do I reverse this? Oh, well, I don't need to. You'll see. The ARRL Foundation is a IRS 501c3 non-for-profit organization that was established in 1973. Obviously, it carries the ARRL name, so it's not directly part of the league, but our 9-member board of directors has 5 members of ARRL board of directors and 5 members not directly associated with the league. Our president is David Woolweaver, K5RAV. He's a past East Gulf director. Brian Milosowski was a past Rocky Mountain Division director. Rick Neuschwander, he's a treasurer. He's a CPA and he's the vice president of finance for a university in North Carolina. There's myself, a former ARRL director. Ria is the director of the NLI division. Tom Abernathy is director of the Atlantic division. Tim Duffy, I think you all know who Tim Duffy is. He's a member of our board. He's one of the non-board members. David Norris is director of the Delta division. Dick Norton is the director of the Southwestern division. And Mike Ritz is the director of the Northwestern division. That's a position I held about 6 years ago, and I was there for 16 years. Okay, here's a textbook mission statement. I'm not going to read it to you. There's no reason to do that, since I'm sure everybody here can read it themselves. But it talks about what a mission statement is. Here's the ARRL Foundation mission statement, and I will read that. It's nice and short. The ARRL Foundation exists to advance the arts, science, and societal benefits of amateur radio service by awarding financial grants and scholarships to individuals and organizations in support of their charitable, educational, and scientific efforts. And of course, we're looking at the scholarship, so that's the educational portion. It's funded by money and grants from members and organizations. And we handle the grants and scholarships much differently because there's lots more money involved in the scholarship portion. Grants come from organizations and individuals to fund various other activities other than the scholarships. Somebody might come in with a request to have an amateur radio station set up in a school. They have approval from the principal or whatever, and they apply to the foundation grant committee to get funded. Usually we require matching funding from organizations that are local. That gives some impetus to local people to understand more amateur radio. Okay, right now we have a couple of guests here, and I'd like to introduce them. And I'm not sure how they come in here, but they do have some comments. First of all is Dr. Nathaniel Frizzell, a PhD, W2NAF. And Nathaniel, you can take it over. I'm not quite sure how you do it. Do I have to stop sharing on this one? Or can I leave this here and just have him talk?
I can go ahead and just talk if you like. I also have a couple of slides about some of the things that I do today. But I guess when Jim contacted me, he asked me to say a few words about my experiences as a scholarship recipient, what it meant for me, and also what I think it means for the students that receive scholarships today. So I would like to say a few words about that. So first, for people who don't know me, I've been a ham since 1998, and I got into amateur radio through scouting. And it was really amateur radio that led me to my career. So that eventually led me to work at a scout camp for 6 years, teaching amateur radio and running an amateur radio station, W2FSR, there. And then it eventually led me to earn my master's and PhD in electrical engineering and really atmospheric physics. And today I'm an assistant professor at the University of Scranton, continuing my amateur radio work. And I
And
think
Nathaniel worked
Yes.
with me at K2BSA a few times, several years ago, and I want to say hello.
Oh, hey, Steve. Yes, that's right. And that's right. And I've been really fortunate to work at K2BSA a number of times also. And so it's really been wonderful. And really my career wouldn't be what it is without amateur radio. And today I've now won over, well over $2 million in National Science Foundation and NASA grants. And a lot of these grants actually revolve around amateur radio work and work with the amateur radio community. So it really has brought me to where I am today. So I guess what do these scholarships mean to me? Well, certainly as a student, I won the QCWA 2005 Donald and Phyllis Doughty Family Scholarship. And I think these scholarships, they're really a way that it validates and recognizes the good work that a student is doing. So the money is very important because we know that universities and college educations are extremely expensive today. You can just, read the news, just talk to your friends who are going through it. We all know it's incredibly expensive. So every bit of money counts. But beyond that, I think the recognition and the prestige and just knowing that there are other people out there who care about what you are doing as a student really is really what's important. And so I think for the students today, if they're able to demonstrate that they are really interested in amateur radio, and if they're able to demonstrate that they want to pursue these sorts of studies further, if they're able to receive some sort of recognition from the broader community that says, yes, this is really a good thing, we're encouraging you to do that, I think it's really going to make a difference to those students. And I can certainly tell you, again, beyond the monetary contribution that these scholarships give, just the prestige that these students are able to put these named awards on their resumes, on their CVs, it helps get them in the door to universities, to additional programs. I know for me, those scholarships have done that for me. They've opened the door. And even now, I've been very fortunate to win these large grants and manage things more on a professional level. Many doors open, not simply because there's money involved, but because people recognize it and say, oh, this is important. So I think this is really valuable. Today, I do work with many students at the University of Scranton, and we have a small but a vibrant club. We're just starting up, and these students are very eager to learn about amateur radio, to learn about physics, to learn about science and engineering, and to learn how to really contribute to society at large. And they're always looking for opportunities and reasons to keep going. And I think these scholarships can really do that. So I guess, Jim, are there any questions from you or the rest of the audience?
Can you tell us a little bit about your grant that you received for the
Sure.
Just briefly.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should share. I will share my screen now. So I do often go around to other clubs and give my own talk about the different things I do. But one of the most important things I believe I've done is start this ham radio science citizen investigation, or HAMSCI. And this is a collaborative that allows university researchers to collaborate with the amateur radio community in scientific investigations. And so we look to advance scientific research and understanding through amateur radio activities. We look to encourage the development of new technologies to support this research, and we look to provide educational opportunities for the amateur radio community and the general public. So it's really this relationship I have from being an amateur radio operator first and being part of the amateur radio community, and now also being a scientist. I've been able to bring these groups together. I think we're really forming a new community of people that can really change the world in a unique way. And this has really taken off. You know, we now have a HamSci Google group with I think it's now over 450 members. We have weekly telecons that people can participate, and we have this annual HamSci workshop, which we just had a couple of weeks ago, and you can still see the recordings of it online. And we bring in people literally from all over the world to present and participate in this workshop. We even had someone from Antarctica call in on that call, and it's really wonderful. But we get people from all age levels and walks of life. So we've had high school students present. We have a number of college undergraduate and graduate students present. We have people who are mid-career, people who are retired. It's really wonderful. So I think the scholarships that I've received, they have helped me to, you know, go on this path and start this organization. And I think that these types of scholarships, they also encourage the types of people, the students who come to the HamSci workshop, to give presentations and participate in it. So I think it's very important. The one other piece I wanted to mention here that we are working on is this idea of this personal space weather station. And the HamSci personal space weather station, this is a multi-instrument ground-based device designed to observe space weather effects both as a single point measurement and as part of a larger network. It's supposed to be a device that helps both scientists and amateur radio operators. And one of the things that's really unique about it is we are actually designing it from the ground up as a community. I'm working with the Tapper group over here, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's an amateur radio electrical engineering nonprofit organization that's essentially national and very connected with the American Radio Relay League. So we're working with Tapper. We're working with all these different universities to put this together. And you can see pretty much everyone on these lists, they all have call signs, and many of them come from amateur radio first. And so this is a major National Science Foundation funded project that I'm leading right now, and that HamSci, it falls under the HamSci umbrella.
Okay, Nathaniel, very good. Thank you very much for your comments.
You're welcome.
Again, this just shows what amateur radio and what scholarships can evolve into. I think it's very exciting that we are involved in this hobby and that we're involved with the foundation. Again, what I said before is this, to me, is probably one of the most satisfying things that I've done in my 60 plus years as a ham, is help the younger generation come along with money and with encouragement, just like Nathan is doing. So thank you very much again.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next guest. See, I'm not on here. Can you get me back on there? Well, I see him up there. This is Ryan Bibby, KN4RQL. You might know of Ryan. You might know him. I think he's a member of your club. But Ryan won your scholarship last year, and I think I was one of the people that was able to choose him, because in looking over our assignments, I recognized the name in the call. So Ryan, congratulations on that. We are going through scholarships right now, and you might get another one this year. Who knows? It's a little too early to tell you for sure. But the scholarship committee is meeting last night to go over some of the work in terms of assigning the various values of scholarships to some of the recipients, or some of the candidates, I should say. So Ryan, go ahead and give your little spiel.
So I'm Ryan Bibby, KN4RQL. I'm a freshman at Kennesaw State University. I'm the president here at the Ham Radio Club that's on campus. I'm actually in our shack right now that the university has let us use. And I'd just like to go over a couple different things. Amateur radio has had a very large impact in my life in general. It's the reason that I've gotten both jobs that I currently have now. It's the reason I'm majoring in computer science, and it's the reason that I chose KSU. It's helped me make many connections with networking and make so many friends. And I'd just like to say the Gwinnett County Amateur Radio Club Scholarship has made my career in college so much easier and more manageable. Because of the scholarship, I didn't have to like get a job as soon as I came to college. I had time to like get settled, worry about my classes, and get myself moved up here. And then I had time to, find a good job and somewhere that I enjoy working. Also, because of the scholarship, I've been able to volunteer a lot more, both for radio-based events and just in my community in general. I volunteered a lot back in my hometown of Fayetteville, Georgia, with my radio club there, KK4GQ. But now with my proximity to the Gwinnett County Amateur Radio Club, I'd love to get more involved up here and get to know all of you a lot more. I would like to personally thank all of you for the Gwinnett County Amateur Radio Scholarship that I received this past year.
Okay, very good, Ryan. Thanks for your comments, and thank you for being here. And again, congratulations on last year's scholarship. And let's keep our fingers crossed for this year's.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, how do we? I don't want to sign off the Zoom meeting. There we go. There's Nathan. His when he was up in Svalbard Island a few years ago.
Excuse me, Jim, you will need to reshare your desktop. When the other presentation came up, it stopped yours, so you'll need to reshare.
Okay, that was Alt Tab. How's that?
That looks good.
Okay. I say, but wait, the scholarship process we've gone through so far, the conversations, we're pretty generic. But let me tell you, there are many hours of work involved. We on the scholarship committee, we get into the springtime, and let me tell you, it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. I estimate so far the entire team, which right now is 7 people, we spent well over 1,000 hours working on these things. It's a labor of love, though, and this is our job. This is the development department group back at ARRL headquarters and the scholarship committee. Okay, let's talk about the overall process. There's a lot of reading here, a lot of words, but I'll try to summarize it. Each donor to the scholarship has specific requirements that they want to have the scholarship committee look at in terms of their particular scholarship. Let me give you a few examples. Wills Morgan, WX7P, who used to live out here in the Northwestern Division, a very, very good friend of mine. We set up his scholarship for the division after he passed away a few years ago. And we said that he should be the candidates. The recipient should be pursuing a STEM curriculum major, have a GPA of 3.0 or above, be an active ham operator, and show proof of activity. This is one of the easier scholarships to award. First of all, it's for $2,000 a year, and it doesn't have too many requirements. We have some, though, that are very, very specific, like the one below. His terms of reference document says that, first of all, the student must live in the Illinois counties of Peoria, Tazewell, Woodford, Knox, McLean, Fulton, Logan, and Marshall, and Stark, and then a lot of other criteria for who he wanted to give the scholarship to. Given those requirements, we might award the scholarship every 2 or 3 years because the candidates don't meet all of his requirements. The document that they use to define what they want is called a terms of reference, or TOR. And you'll hear this term a lot through the presentation because this is what guides us as scholarship committee to choose candidates and to make awards to them. A donor also decides how his gift should be given, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. That's called a permanently restricted scholarship. As I say, the terms of reference document is filled out by the donor and also works with the ARRL development department and the scholarship committee. Because again, and I keep repeating this, it describes the scholarship and the requirements that the donor desires. For instance, a donor might give an amount, say $10,500, and he wants this award to be awarded every year. So that's $10,000 plus the expenses that might incur. So there are 10 scholarships, and unless he gives additional money, the scholarship goes away. We have two types of funding for scholarships: permanently restricted and temporarily restricted. The previous example was a temporarily restricted because he gives us money and we grant scholarships until the money runs out. Once it runs out, then no more scholarships are awarded under his name until he donates more additional money. These are standard accounting terms. And by the way, I don't know if I said this before, but I'm a retired CPA. I've been dealing with financial stuff all of my career. And so I understand all these things and the reason for them. Okay, as I mentioned before, temporarily restricted, they're used to fund scholarships and expenses. If there's insufficient money, this is important, no scholarship will be awarded until more monies are added. And as the previous comment, where if he doesn't update the scholarship with additional funding, it goes away. Sometimes, especially for older scholarships, we can't find who the donor is, and the scholarship has expired from having a money standpoint. If we have located some people and they've given them more money, they might say that they don't want to give any more money. But anytime we have any remaining funds over the scholarship value, it'll be transferred to the foundation general fund. And we also give scholarships out of the general fund. We have six scholarships out of the general fund of $2,000 each. Anybody who is coming up with a new temporarily restricted scholarship, it's a minimum of $1,000. We'd like more. It used to be $500, and as you know, $500 isn't all that much from the standpoint of today's cost of education, as Nathaniel mentioned. Okay, the permanently restricted scholarships, we have a minimum of $25,000 on those. The corpus of these funds, that means the amount that is given, remain in the named scholarship fund on the books of record. Those funds are never spent. Any interest on those funds, the corpus, which is the given amount, is carried on the foundation books in perpetuity. We can never spend that money unless the donor decides or has in his terms of reference that it can be used later on, perhaps after he passes away. So we have a few $1 million in those types of funds. Obviously, with the interest earnings the way they've been the past couple of years, those aren't earning enough interest in some cases to provide the scholarship. So we try to do that every 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how much is given. We have one scholarship, or we have one donation, which has right now almost $1 million in it. So even at let's say if they earn 3%, that's $30,000, and we can use that every year. We do have that scholarship. That's a 4-year scholarship. We haven't awarded that in about 7 years because there just wasn't enough earned money until the people that got that scholarship before graduated. We believe this year we can probably award it again, but we'll have to see. I have talked to the president of the foundation and some of the board members saying it's time to go back, look at that again, because we have so many outstanding applicants this year. We have a development department at headquarters. It includes a full-time manager and 2 assistants, plus an accounting department staff member. And we have to pay for the yearly audit also. So that's why we charge this 1.5 or 2% of the donations or of the scholarships every year to help fund this. Again, this is a private organization. It's a 501c3 on the IRS records, and so we have to pay the league for these services. This is not their full-time job, except during May and June and July when they get the recommendations from the committee and have to call people, issue checks, and then checks go to the university where the student's attending. So we have to make sure that the student is still going to go to that university. As I say, also, if we have the temporarily restricted scholarships, ones that we can use all the money, if the balance is less than $20,000, and most of them are now, they don't, and we don't put the interest back into that account. There's no fees assessed on that money, and those, as I mentioned before, go into the general ARRL scholarship fund and are issued in terms of the ARRL scholarships. Okay. How do we create scholarships? What's the various options that you can do? I got a scholarship last year from Chick Allen, who lives up in Delaware, and he was managing the process with the Potomac Valley Radio Club. And I told him the fact that we could use more and more of these scholarships. Well, he contributed money, and so now he has his own scholarship, and it'll be awarded for the first time this year. We have an in memoriam scholarship. I talked about my friend Wills Morgan, WX7P. We created a scholarship for him, and the Northwest Division members are donating money to that particular named scholarship. We have a club scholarship like you folks have, the Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society scholarship, which Ryan won last year, and which has money in it this year that we can award that scholarship this year. Now there won't be enough money after we award the scholarship, so you might consider donating more money from your club so we can award a scholarship in 2022. We have a group scholarship where individuals can just donate money, so the scholarship might not be in their name directly, but we have money that we can give. An example of that again is the the Potomac Valley Radio Club. They pulled a number of members together, and they have created their own scholarship this year, which I'm told, I don't know what the amount is, but I'm told that it has a substantial lot of money in it. So it'll be fun to see what that scholarship ends up as. And we won't award that this year. We'll award that starting in 2022. We have some corporate scholarships also. If a organization wants to create a scholarship, we treat that just like any other scholarship, and we award it based on their terms of reference. And any of these can either be the permanently restricted, where the corpus, the amount of money that they give stays in the account, and we issue scholarships based on the interest, or a temporary restricted. Okay, this is very important, I believe, from the standpoint of, again, either young kids, young people who are listening to this presentation, to fathers, to grandfathers, to great grandfathers. Good grades in high school and college. A GPA of 3.5 or higher is generally puts you into the realm of having or being able to apply for that scholarships. Some scholarships state 3.75 on the terms of reference. A ham radio license. All of our scholarships, they have to be licensed. I say prior to the current year because some people we find get their licenses in December and then apply for a scholarship also in December. Okay. The question I have in that case is, are they really interested in ham radio, or are they interested in money? And the answer is a very definite maybe. We do try to look at that when they were licensed and say, well, maybe they can apply next year once they show proof of activity. High school clubs, college clubs, activities, events, field day, and other items are also a factor. Some of the donors of these scholarships require that they show proof of amateur radio activity, and this is a good way that they can do that. Activities out of high school, community activities, Boy Scouts, a lot of these other things that lots of kids do nowadays. Define career goals. If somebody says, yeah, I want to go to college, I want a scholarship, I'm not sure where I'm going to go, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Well, that particular individual might not get a scholarship this year until they perhaps mature a little bit and decide what they might want to do. Ability to verbalize all of the above. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. Spelling, you'd be surprised how many applications that we get from kids where their spelling and grammar are horrible. We give them feedback and said, you know, you could have got one, but if you go to work for a firm, they want you to be good spellers and use decent grammar because people look at that. And as I say, it's amazing. Not a lot of them, but some kids don't bother with it. The other thing that we say is when you apply for a scholarship, please, please, please read the terms of reference for each scholarship that you want to apply for. Some kids just mark all 130 scholarships. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, that's being lazy. If you apply for a scholarship that says only Northwest Division and you live in New York, don't apply to it. You aren't following the instructions. It could be grounds for disqualification from any scholarship. I say could be, we haven't done that yet, but could be. And if an applicant is unsure about something or a specific question, call the development department for clarification. If they don't call, they will call me. And I've gotten quite a few calls from them in terms of what about this? Okay, how are the recipients chosen? Yeah, it's kind of a balancing act because we get so many applications and we have so many scholarships that it's a balance in terms of, does an individual student qualify? Does he do this? Does he do that? Okay, for this scholarship year, we have over 170 applicants. There are 130 scholarships. So we have the data elements where they have to give us information. That's done online. Grades, information on career aspirations, for instance, scholarships which they might want to get. There are 115 elements that they might have to make a decision on. And they have to input this into our online screen. When you look at the numbers, take the 170 times 130. There are nearly 2,000 fields that we have to consider. 20,000 fields we have to consider for that individual to qualify for that scholarship and to be considered. That's a lot of data, a lot of work. Okay, what applicants need to do to prepare a request for consideration for a scholarship? Again, this is a competitive process. If you want to be competitive, you got to be complete, you got to be verbal, you've got to use proper spelling and grammar. So read and understand the terms of reference is my first point there. Other items which are not required but helpful on the TOR. You must have an amateur radio license. That's one of the requirements. A good thing to have is to join the ARRL. Some kids don't join the league. They are members of the league. We get very interesting answers when they tell us how they found out about the scholarship. I'll go over that pretty soon. Get on the air and be active. You have a license. If you don't show activity, lots of the donors say if they have to show activity. Join a local and national club. Some don't belong to any club. Some don't get on the air. Some got licensed 1 or 2 months ago, or even earlier in the year. Those people probably will not be considered because we're trying to balance all the time between kids that have an interest and the kids that don't have an interest. Get good grades. You generally have to have a minimum of 3.0 GPA for nearly any scholarship. And I say any. For instance, I talked earlier about the club in Peoria, Illinois that has certain counties. Well, the kid might or might not get a higher value scholarship. He might be qualified for this one slot in Peoria, which maybe he has a GPA of 2.5, and maybe he meets other criteria. Well, we could give him that scholarship. So there are exceptions to all these rules, obviously. I mentioned before that a 3.75, the higher GPA you have, the more likely is that you will get a scholarship. It might be a big scholarship, it might be a little scholarship. Who knows?
Jim, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure. Go ahead, Joe.
We got a question from the chat from KO4 HLC. Rachel asks, if you've been awarded the scholarship and you need to or choose to change schools, does that carry forward?
You need to go back to the development department and tell them that, and they will contact the old school and the new school. So the development department back at ARRL headquarters will take care of all that. And they'll
Okay.
make all the arrangements.
Rachel, do you have any additional question to that?
No, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Okay. Have other interests besides school and ham radio. Boy Scouting, serving on some local community, be in the Rotaract, which is the high school Rotary Club. If you show a lot of interest other than ham radio and studying, again, that's just another factor. We're trying to, as I mentioned before, we're trying to balance. And people who just are focused on one thing and one thing alone, again, that's a tipping point because they're competing with everybody else who's applied for that scholarship. Some terms of reference say that they have to show a need. In other words, what percentage of their scholarship is going to be paid for by their parents or grants or something else, other scholarships or Pell Grant or something. Those are all factored in, especially for those situations where the TOR says a financial need. Don't major in ham radio. You all know what that means. I'm sure all of you are like me. I majored in ham radio. Fortunately, I came to my senses and I ended up with 3 different degrees. But when I first got licensed, I got my DXCC. I got licensed when I was 13. I got my DXCC in early I was licensed for 2 years and got my first DXCC using 75 watts and a dipole and a homemade Yagi. So I majored in ham radio in high school, and then I came into my senses. Find great mentors. That's always very important. They can work with you in terms of a lot of these other activities, teach you ham radio, teach you some things, and also give you advice. Lots of times parents don't understand ham radio. My father didn't understand that. He was concerned about lightning when I had my dipole up. And some friends of mine who were my mentors helped him come to understand ham radio. I missed that previous screen. Can I go back? I don't know if I can or not. I'm sure there's a way. Yeah, but I don't have my little clicker here. Okay, from the committee standpoint of selecting scholarship recipients, this is an exercise of elimination. We have 170 applicants and 130 scholarships. We have to eliminate the ones that don't qualify. So students, don't eliminate yourself. Think of the interview, think of this as an interview for a job. Tiebreakers. That's what I said before. Look at all the things we have to consider. And 2 or 3 being, let's say, almost equal. If a student, for instance, everything else being equal, and we try to be objective as possible, but obviously there is some subjectivity. But not being a member of the league might be one of those tiebreakers. Not being on the air much might be another tiebreaker. Having a GPA of 3.75 or 3.8 might be a tiebreaker. Again, we have a limited number of scholarships and a limited number of applicants, and the applicants have to prove that they're worthy of that particular scholarship. Again, I say before, it's all based on the terms of reference. Preferred does not mean required, maybe. Let me give you an example. One of the terms of reference for a club said that the student, the person who we give the scholarship to is preferred to live in Northeast US. Okay. When we went through the list of donors, I'm sorry, of applicants, we looked at the word preferred. Well, we didn't have anybody from that particular area that didn't have a scholarship or was not qualified. So the reviewer of that gave that scholarship to somebody in California. Guess who absolutely came unglued? Okay, that's what I mean. Preferred does not mean required. Now, if they would have said must, it must live in that particular geographic area, that means absolutely. That means that's required. In the past, when we created terms of reference, they didn't look at some of that information from the standpoint of the development department or whoever on the foundation was looking at that, saying, "Oh, just go ahead and say preferred." Well, okay, that happens. A major course of study doesn't mean that that's your anticipated major right now. Yeah, you might change this later during the time of school. I think I changed my major 3 or 4 times, even during undergrad. But as I got older, got more mature, I went from having a political science major to getting an MBA and then to getting an accounting degree and becoming a CPA. I dropped out of the first year of engineering school because I didn't like the math. Guess what? After going through 3 degrees, I have a math major. Go figure. Again, read the TOR to see if you actually qualify before applying for it. The burden it gives us reviewers having to go through and to figure out who doesn't qualify for that particular scholarship. We have, as I mentioned before, again, 20,000 data fields we need to look through. And it takes a lot of time. Okay, this is a lot of detail here, but I'd like to go through it just to show you how we as a committee work. And I will read these things and then we can talk about them. What we do when we get the full list of donors and we get the list from the candidate as to which ones he wants to be considered for, we assign a list of those scholarships for each committee member to review. We each review somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 scholarships. And then we review the candidate who selected those scholarships for consideration. We look at the TOR to determine which candidates meet those requirements. And for the first time this year, we have some higher value scholarships that we scheduled. We developed a interview process and scheduled it. We have 31 scholarships that start at $25,000 and go down to $5,000. Did we have to do interviews? Well, it wasn't required that we do interviews for this. But from a marketing standpoint, we wanted to do interviews, first of all, to see what kind of kids were out there who were applying to scholarships, number one. And number two, to be able to go back to the donor and say, this is how we did it to make sure that we gave your scholarships to the correct, whatever that means, individual. So we had about 40 scholarships or 40 interviews that we made. We found a lot about the kids who were applying based on those interviews. When I was working on the interviews as a team leader or even as a helper, and we divided the interviews among 7 of us. My only comment, and a couple were wow. They were so fantastic. That's all I could say. They met all the requirements. They gave wonderful interviews. They had their act together. Wow. That person's going to get a $25,000 scholarship. And we have 6 of those to give out. So once we go through the process, either with the interviews or reviewing all of the documentation, we create a list of the first, second, and sometimes a third choice by individual scholarship. And we do this individually on the less higher value scholarships or the lower value scholarships. Once we come up with our recommendations, the entire committee reviews all of the recommendations from everybody on the committee and comes up with some recommendations, as I mentioned before. Our first meeting is tomorrow night. we are going through the one donor who gave us the $400,000. That's going to be 31 scholarships. Do the math. That's an average of about $12,000 per scholarship.
Jim, how do you come up with 25,000? Is that just from what is donated at any given year, I guess?
We talked to on that particular situation where we got the 400,000 this year. That's what the donor wanted. He wanted scholarships of that amount, and so there are 6 of them. And then we went down from 25,000 to 15,000 to 10,000 to 5,000.
Okay. Thanks.
He did give us a couple $100,000 last year. It happened real late in the process, so he couldn't go through the interview process like we did this year. So we convinced him to match the scholarships. So for instance, Ryan was awarded a scholarship from your club and it was doubled. And we went through all the math with that and got that finished. This year we started the interviews back in early March. And it was a very interesting process. The first time we'd done this. So myself and the team had to develop this entire process. And hopefully, Ryan, you found the process to be interesting, and we did give you some questions ahead of time to have you think, and I think you did quite well in the interviews. So we start with the higher values first. We start with the $25,000 first, then we did those. Then we start down from high to low, because if a kid from one reviewer says he's okay for $1,000 ship, and the other reviewer says no, I think he should get a $5,000 scholarship. Well, if we agree that the $5,000 ship is awarded to him first. Once we get all this done, we go to the entire foundation board, which are 9 of us right now, and we discuss all our recommendations and ask for approval. And yes, there are questions from the other team members that aren't on the scholarship committee. Well, why this, why that? What made that person stand out? So we have to be prepared to answer those types of questions. Once they're approved, we have gone back and made some changes. But once most of them are approved, we got to go back to the development department. And they have to notify the recipients. And I think, as I said earlier, the money that is that's awarded does not go to the individual student; it goes to the university. And then they disperse the funds from their account for similar types of scholarships. Okay, that's my presentation. I'm not sure what time it is, but are there any questions that anybody has?
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I know several of the recipients, and one of our, actually, he was part of a scouting organization, a venture crew that's no longer with us, but he has his degree now, and he's working for the government in aerospace engineering. They moved him out to California, and really, really good kid, and it did help him a lot. I think the GARS scholarship has helped several youth that I know, and they really do appreciate it.
What place did he go to in California, Steve? You know the company?
I forgot. His mother told me, but I forgot.
You know where it's located?
I get it's one of a government. Actually, it's a government organization out in the desert in California that does super secret work that we're not supposed to know about.
Okay. The reason I asked is I retired from a company called Aerojet. They make real rocket engines, and I was a financial guy for one of the divisions. I was the CFO for one of the divisions. Okay, anybody else have any questions? There's got to be a few questions. Somebody stop me, come on. Joe, you have a question, I can tell.
Well, someone put in a chat, do you typically deal with just young students, or do you deal with older and non-traditional students who are pursuing school to change careers?
The answer to your question is yes, we do. The youngest person that applied this year was 14 years old.
Wow.
She's in high school, but she's also taking college courses. She's applied for a scholarship, and she'll get one. Maybe not as much as others, because of the fact that because she's attending in the college classes, those are paid for by her school district, both from the standpoint of the tuition and fees, but she has to pay for the books. We have another fellow that's 52, I think, and he's changing careers. And his reason for changing careers and his qualifications are going to qualify him for a scholarship. We have others that got out of the military. Maybe they spent 10 years in the military and they don't want to have that kind of career. They want to do something differently. And we've given them scholarships also. So it's a broad range. We have not, I don't believe, given any scholarships as long as I've been on the committee to somebody overseas. However, of the $400 scholarship, a $400,000 scholarship grant, it said that they could be from overseas. They were not going to let those out, but nobody applied this year for those. So obviously they're not going to get them. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got a few questions. As far as, are you going to be able to send out the information so we can go to some website that shows a listing of all of these different scholarships?
You want all the difference, or do you want the recipient, or both?
Well, my son, he's an aerospace engineering. He graduated from Georgia Tech, and now he's going to UCF to get his master's in aerospace engineering.
Okay.
And he's got his amateur radio license as well, and on launching satellites, and that's what he wants to end up doing as well, is work on satellites. So he's definitely looking for some scholarships, and just wondering, which ones could he apply for? And I just need to be able to have him, focus on those particular scholarships so you can review them, because you said some of them you have to be in the Illinois area, or you have to do this or that. So just be able to pare it down.
What I say there is he needs to work with the development department, and they could send him the terms of references for those types of scholarships. Now, from a time standpoint, I'm not sure if they have time to go through the individual scholarships and trying to match up him with your son with the terms of reference. But call Melissa Stemmer first and see if she can do that for you.
At the ARRL?
Yeah, she's the manager of the development department.
Okay.
And or for specific questions like that, depending on timing and everything else, I could help a little bit on that too, because I pretty much know the individual scholarships and what they are and what they require. Some of them are very open. We don't have an issue with the very tight terms of reference. We're trying to loosen them up a little bit, but by golly, if somebody wants to give us $1 million and they say they have to live in Podunk Hollow, we'll find people in Podunk Hollow. So anybody else? You got some more questions, Dave?
And can recipients apply for follow-up scholarships?
Yes, they can. During the interview process for the higher value scholarships, that's one of the questions that we ask them. Our dilemma right now is there's a couple of groups that are giving scholarships, sometimes from the same donor. And we'd like to make sure that a candidate does not get a large scholarship from two different donors, or from two different groups from the same donor. That becomes a little bit subjective.
Double dipping.
Exactly. We have others that would like to have the cash directly. Just write us a check. No, we don't do that. We give it to the school and they can do it. Well, but that isn't fair. Well, okay, then we'll work with somebody else. That's the way it is. We try to be very objective. We try to follow all the accounting rules. We try to follow all the rules that people would want us to follow. We are audited every year. And we have to pay for the audit. And auditors find things that people don't think they will. My wife is a retired auditor. She goes through all of our finances and said, "What did you spend this for?" I know how auditors work. Anyone else?
There is a question in the chat from Rachel. Is it a bad sign if you weren't asked to interview this year?
It depends on, number one, did Rachel apply for this particular scholarship? Because anybody who applied for it was all reviewed. Then we went through everybody to see if they met the qualifications for the for that particular scholarship or those series of scholarships. And if they didn't meet the qualifications, then they weren't interviewed. Otherwise, we interviewed all the people that applied for that particular group of scholarships and met the qualifications.
I guess as a follow-up to that, are people that apply for a scholarship that are not granted one, are they notified?
Yes. Yes, headquarters notifies anybody who is not, who did not receive a scholarship.
So would it be fair to say that if Rachel hasn't received an interview but she hasn't received a rejection letter, that she's still in the running?
She's still in the running for a scholarship, but I don't know which one. As I mentioned before, tomorrow evening, the committee is going to go through all of the higher value scholarships from ARDC, Amateur Radio and Digital Communications Group. So if she's not gotten any calls about the interview, then it was deemed that she was not qualified based on their terms of reference to apply for that scholarship. We leave it up to the candidates to determine which scholarships they apply for. Again, back to the terms of reference. With all the work we have to do, we just can't. It's hard to ferret out people that don't qualify. We have to do it a lot of the time. That's why we say that sometimes if they do this on everything, if they don't read any of the requirements, we won't consider them at all in some cases. They have to do work. Hey, this is like a job. When you go for a job interview, you got to find out about the company. That's how you get hired. Because during the interview, they're going to ask you about their company, and you had better done some work on that. This is their job right now. Their job is to get money for their education.
Jim, what I think I heard was throughout your presentation, you've taken a lot of mystery out of this, but it sounds like someone needs to show a need, that they need to be active, they need to have good grades, which you put all that together, it makes them a genuine person. Sounds like a pretty simple selection algorithm to me.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. It's just we got to go through 20,000 bits of data.
Right. Well, are there any more? Are there any more questions for Jim? Boy, he's really covered a lot of stuff and in quite a good amount of detail. Any other questions? Well, Jim, I want to thank you. Appreciate you coming on with GARS and helping people out. Just want to remind everyone, and you can tell everybody that you know that also that this will be hitting our YouTube channel pretty soon after our editor gets done with the splicing and dicing that he does, and we'll have it out there so other people can learn more of this process as you just explained. And absolutely loved hearing from Nathan and Ryan. It was great to hear their take on this and being recipients themselves, and obviously very genuine young men.
Yeah. As I say, it's been a wonderful experience doing this, and it's one of the highlights of my amateur radio career, being on the ARRL board, being on the scholarship committee, being chairman of the scholarship committee now. It's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's so satisfying for me personally to be able to contribute back to amateur radio and the league and the hobby and the young kids that apply for these. Well, not just young kids, but of the people that apply for these. One of the reasons, again, why we did the interview process in these, number one, it's a large amount of money, but they being ARDC, didn't ask for us to do this. But my best hunch is they're going to come back and they're going to ask sometime in the future. And so everything is documented. The forms are documented, the process is documented. If they have any questions about how we did it, we have everything done, and it's completed now. I guess that's part of my mindset being a CPA. You have
also-
to.
It also helps with your audits, right?
It helps with the audits, yeah. But we've had no issues with audits, so it's more of a marketing thing from our standpoint that we hopefully did it right, and I feel that we did.